Live from the studios at the Thomas K. McKeon Center for Creativity,
It's time for Tulsa's Creative Conversation.
a show that focuses on Tulsa's local arts community.
So let's get talking. Hello, welcome to another edition of Creative Conversations. I'm Mark Frank, coordinator of theater.
And I'm Anina Collier, Dean and George Kaiser Family Foundation Endowed Chair of the Center for Creativity. And we are here at the Center for Creativity with our guest artist, Sonja Schenk. Welcome, Sonja.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks you guys.
We are so glad you're here from LA. You're in town just for a few days to have a pop-up exhibition and do some workshops. And we've had just a great time with you here. And we were wanting our viewers to get to know you a little bit and hear about your work. So tell us about Sonja Schenk, visual artist.
Yeah.
Well, I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I'm a painter and a sculptor. I do installation work, and interestingly, I kind of started out as a video artist, and that's kind of ironically what led to my kind of day job film career, which I think maybe we'll talk about a little later.
Mm-hmm.
But always along the way, my true passion was fine art, and in particular contemporary art.
So for someone who might not be familiar with the term video artist, and tell us about that genre and the type of work you did.
Yeah, video art is, it's not narrative usually. It's using videotapes, which, a long time ago when video art came about, like in the 60s, video was really different than film, because video was like, films were made on 35 millimeter film, and they were always 90 minutes or more, et cetera. And video was like a very different media. It was very low quality. And so artists were able to take what were basically news cameras and go shoot whatever they wanted in this kind of more free-form way. And that's how video art evolved as a separate kind of trajectory from film. And so now, like, we actually all use the same cameras and the same HD video for both. But video art has maintained a very different kind of content, like more experimental. If there is narrative, very much outside kind of the mainstream of what you would see in Hollywood. And also more just free form in general, like there really are no rules.
And your installation art is just fantastic. I mean, I love the way it uses the whole space. Can you describe a little bit some of your installation works?
Yeah, I've been doing, that's relatively new, sort of. Actually, when I was doing video art, I was doing video installations, but then I didn't do that kind of stuff for a long time. And then I started doing installation work, which usually takes the form of things that either appear to float or hover. And so a lot of the work I do is actually made out of styrofoam with like a kind of veneer, ironically kind of using some film tricks and techniques there. And so some of the biggest ones I've done, there's one that just showed in LA called The End, and it's a large life-size broken highway that yeah, and each piece is about like this big, and there's like the double stripe, and there's 5 pieces. So it's about 20 feet long and 15 feet tall, and it looks like a floating road that's broken up. And
So when you have a gallery showing, like, what would I see besides that in the gallery? Like, what else would you have on display?
probably something like that, and then some probably usually what I typically show is large paintings, so like 6-7 foot range, square-ish.
There's a theater artist named Robert Brown. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he was from the 60s, and he did a lot of stuff with video art on the stage with his theatrical production. So it's interesting with you saying that, and then your gallery and your concept of like the highway. He would do that in part of with a play, and have a lot of his work there, and then they would use that with a play back in the 60s. So
that sounds
it's
really
so cool that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
It's fun.
and then a lot of your work I've seen features concrete or rocks. Tell us about your subject matter and how you approach that.
Well, I actually, I'm not as obsessed with rocks as I might seem if you look at my art, but I do think rocks are kind of this amazing thing because they are both completely mundane, and then when you start to think about time and geologic time, and they lead you very quickly to ideas of like eternity and kind of, I mean, they're sort of infinitely scalable as well. Like a rock can look like a planet, or an asteroid or a mountain or a pebble. And, the little ones seem to have almost as much detail as like the Swiss Alps or whatever. So that is kind of what I see in rocks. I think they have that, so they can be kind of funny in a way because it can just be, you're like, whatever, it's a rock,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the same time, it's like, oh, wow, that rock has been around longer than we can even really wrap our brains around.
Mm-hmm.
And then the concrete is sort of like a variation on that, but it is more about this idea of kind of like what would our civilization look like, what might be left of our civilization in the very, very distant future. And I just thought of the things that don't really break down, and concrete is one of them. And there are many others because we're not like cave people, so we have steel structured buildings, and but nevertheless, like what might be left, I thought the highways kind of in the Midwest and the Southwest would be like our pyramids in a way.
Well, and when we were chatting the other day, you mentioned that if we're talking the very far distant future, they might not even know what those overpasses were for, like those big cloverleaf overpasses you were talking about, and they could be seen as religious relics or anything else.
Right.
So it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, so the concrete and the rock thing is very interesting because I think that's a true artist to find beauty in everything on this earth. And so, so with what you said about the rock, do you have like galleries of stuff that you've created with rock that you've?
I do. I have a piece called Light for the Sun it's not here, but it's actually on display in Joshua Tree, California right now through the summer, and it's 3 boulders, like pretty big boulders from California stones. And I did a project where I put the gold back into
so cool.
the rocks. So I added gold veins to the rocks, and it's real rocks and real gold, and they're sitting out in the desert somewhere right now.
Do you sell all that? Do you sell those gallery? I mean, you have.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I sell work. Those pieces especially can be outside or inside or whatever.
Yeah, great.
And what else is there? There's sometimes I just do paintings of rocks, and a lot of times they're levitated as well in the painting.
Let's talk for a minute about a technique you use that's really unusual. I've never seen it before, but visual art is not my background. But it's you take photographs and then you paint and draw on collage on top of them.
Right.
And it really, you can imagine overlaying so many neat structures and bringing out certain elements. So tell us about how you developed that technique.
It kind of came about organically. Like the way I usually come up with an idea is actually writing like text in a notebook, like I think and write. And then when I have an idea for a specific piece, I'll go out and shoot photos. Usually lately at least they've tended to be out in kind of remote desert areas and stuff. And then I'll just shoot a ton of photos, and then I'll bring them back and I'll start looking at them on the computer and deciding which ones seem interesting to me. And so for a while I was trying to really draw sketches, and that would take forever, like sometimes longer than doing an actual painting. And then I started trying to use Photoshop, which I still use a lot, but I realized that there were things that were faster and it was more freeing to work in like a physical space. So maybe I would like start working in Photoshop or do like a basic composite in Photoshop, but then I would print it out and then just start using the tools I had at hand, which was like some white ink and some black ink and pencil and a ballpoint pen.
That's so neat.
Yeah, and then sometimes I'd be like, I need something else over here. And so instead of going back into Photoshop, I would just like cut up a photo and like stick it down. And they're pretty rough, but they're kind of cool as their own things, but they really are preparatory drawings or whatever media pieces. Yeah.
When you mentioned the Swiss Alps before, you are of Swiss descent, and does that influence your work at all?
It does. I mean, I think what influences my work is maybe being a first-generation American. So that, that I, like a lot of other first-generation Americans, maybe notice things a little differently, that things stand out to me that if you really had family from here, you would think are totally normal or maybe not notice. I think that's probably true.
That's interesting.
So in LA, do you teach classes then? Do you have art classes that you teach, or are you just mostly an artist that kind of shows off your work in galleries? And
yeah, I'm really an artist. I do teach sometimes. I sometimes have taught kids filmmaking.
Oh, that's great. Oh,
yeah.
Filmmaking, wow.
Yeah, there's this great after-school program in my neighborhood, and so sometimes I teach there, and then occasional workshops or whatever. But it's not my way of making a living or whatever. I'm not a teacher by trade or whatever. Yeah.
So part of what brought you were attracted us to you is that you are multidisciplinary, and I know that you think of yourself for sure and really concentrate the most on your visual art. We were also very intrigued by you because you have a secret life as a filmmaker and an editor and a producer, and you're very accomplished. You're very quiet about it, but you're very accomplished. And your film, The Olivia Experiment, it really kind of captured a dream of a lot of people, which is to create a low-budget film that was picked up for a theatrical release, that was well-reviewed by the LA Times. So would you mind talking about that a little bit in your filmmaking?
Of course not. The Olivia Experiment came about. I worked with my good friend, Alex Komisarek, and she wrote the script. And so she actually approached me, and I read that script and a couple others and ended up deciding I liked that one, and we started working together. And at first we were trying to kind of go the typical Hollywood route of either getting a production company involved or raising money or whatever. And at this point, we both had a fair amount of experience working in Hollywood. And I ended up, at some point, it just was clearly going to take forever. I mean, which is what it normally does. Like a typical film, like an indie film, takes at least 5 years. There's probably at least 3 years getting to this point of shooting it, just to get the money in place and the cast and everything. And so we just didn't feel like waiting. So we raised a little money and we shot it like the way you shoot a student film. We got it in the can for like a ridiculously low sum and begged and borrowed every favor we had and, got it shot.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah. And then we did, the festival circuit. And the last time I was in this area was driving to and from St. Louis, actually. It was to go to that festival. But couple of years ago. But and then by luck, I think, because it's really, like you said, it's really unusual actually to get, to get theatrical distribution for a film with a budget that's, under $200,000 and has no famous actors and not a famous director, not based on a book or whatever, a famous story. Those are like things I learned along the way that you should actually do. But yeah, so we didn't do any of that. We had none of that going for us. And we did, luckily, get in touch with the distributor, picked up the film and released it theatrically at the Lemley Theaters, which are like the independent chain in Los Angeles.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was great. And that's why we got the review, because like you really can't get a review unless you're in a theater.
Right.
At least from the LA Times.
So do you have another movie in mind, or is...
I'm working on a couple projects that we are doing a more traditional approach this time, because I don't think you can do that. I don't think anyone would choose to work at such a low budget twice if they could avoid it. And it also doesn't really make sense to do it again, that. So I actually have a couple scripts that writers I'm working with wrote that are they're currently at a production company, and I'm sort of waiting to see what they say. So
good job.
We'll
Wow,
see.
That's great. Got time for some fun questions?
We do, and I think we should tease a little bit about The Bachelor.
Yeah.
We hear that you were a producer on The Bachelor.
I was.
Can you tell us a behind the scenes story of?
Oh gosh, there's just so many.
She's like, where do I start?
Wow, I can't even really, it's hard to think of a specific anecdote.
What's something that if someone said, oh, well, I worked on The Bachelor, what's something that you had to do or did that someone wouldn't have expected?
I think probably, we would know that people were going to do something silly in advance, maybe because they'd talked about it with somebody. And so there would be times where we would have to prep the camera people for someone was going to maybe do 3 back handsprings in high heels and a prom dress.
Oh my God!
Which did happen when I worked on.
Wow, that'd be surprising.
She said she could do it, and we're like, "Can you do it in your heels and your dress?" And she said she could. And so we had the crew kind of shooting her with with the knowledge that if given the signal, they would all have to back up
So they
Yeah.
and get out of the way.
That's funny. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll have to hear more of those stories over drinks sometime or something.
It was a fun job. It really was. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
That was
Thank
great.
you, Sonja.
And we'll see you next time on another edition of Creative Conversations.
Oh, I remember